Welcome to Into the Night. I'm Nari, your guide on today's excursion down a twisted path. Be careful not to get lost. Be it dark or light, it's easy to lose your way. Are you ready? Then let's begin. A Hero's Welcome, Part 1. Judd Simpson lived what many would consider a glamorous life. He laughed when people said that, however. He knew the truth. In reality, he was a bright but simplistic man who worked a job with grueling hours, monotony, and periodic bursts of exhilaration. He was a college-educated engineer from MIT, and he focused on his aerospace career with determination. The private company he worked for handled government contracts and in most regards worked seamlessly with NASA and the United States military. Being an astronaut had its perks, but without the dedication and the willingness to repeat mundane tasks, the exciting part of his job wouldn't exist. Going into the profession, Judd realized there'd be more boring days than exhilarating ones. But he yearned to someday make it into space. His dream propelled him through the tedious climb up the aeronautical ladder. It took more than wanderlust to make it to where he wanted to go. Judd knew he had to pay his dues. Actually going into space was like winning the lottery, but that's why he chose to work for a private space company, Space United, instead of pursuing a career at NASA. Astronauts who flew for the government were predominantly military officers, and Judd never wanted a military career. So he decided to hang his hopes on the up-and-coming industry of privatized spaceflight. The journey was slow. For years, he put in his time doing the background work that allowed others their moments in the spotlight. People cheered as Space United flights hurtled into the sky, delivering everything from satellites to human cargo. Even with advancements in space exploration, workers on the space station could only remain in the hostile environment of space for a year or so at a time. Employees were shuttled back and forth to keep fresh minds and healthy bodies at work on the station. Food, tools, and other supplies were also carried to the station, and some expeditions made longer flights into space to replace worn-out parts on telescopes and other equipment. As dedicated to his daily routine as he was, Judd longed for a time when he did more than watch flights take off. He didn't mind the wait, though. He loved his job, and he knew if he bided his time, pulled his weight, and was lucky, that his opportunity would come along. Suddenly, out of the blue, so to speak, his chance arrived. During an otherwise normal Wednesday, when he fiddled with a piece of equipment in the engineering lab, a voice over the intercom summoned him to the conference room.
What is this about? I hope this isn't an ass-chewing from the higher-ups. That incident last Tuesday was an honest mistake. How was I supposed to know that Jenkins didn't want anyone to know about his promotion?
Judd tried to stay clear of building politics, so he kicked himself for possibly plopping himself into the middle of drama. An off-the-cuff comment in the break room the previous week hadn't been intended to cause a firestorm. Generally, Judd wasn't one to take part in gossip, and he disappointed himself by talking about someone else's news to share.
I just wanted to come to work and do my job. I have no interest in dodging political minefields in the lab. These people need to focus on what's really important, and so do I.
His gut twisted and turned as he trudged down the hallway, anxious to find out if he was going to be called on the carpet. His legs felt heavy as he walked. Finally, he stopped in front of the conference room door. Taking a deep breath, he pulled the handle and stepped inside. 3 men sat at one side of the long oak table. Full cups of coffee were placed in front of the men by an intern, whom the men motioned away once adequate amounts of cream and sugar were provided. Wisps of steam and aroma floated into the air. Military ribbons decorated the chests of the crisp military jackets worn by 3 men who carried the unmistakable air common to those used to commanding attention. Judd froze in his tracks for a moment. While not a military man himself, he recognized the men as generals.
Good God, what have I done to make Uncle Sam mad at me? I had nothing to do with last year's security breach.
His mind raced, and his heart rate kept pace with his spinning thoughts. Generals Thurman, Stanton, and Helms recently arrived at the Space United Complex from the Pentagon. They stood as Judd finally found his bearings and entered the room. The standard introductions were made, and afterward, Judd swallowed hard and asked the question weighing heavily on his mind.
Am I in trouble?
General Thurman chuckled.
No, sir, you're not in trouble.
Have a seat. We have a serious matter to discuss with you, however. Judd's face relaxed.
Of course. How can I help?
We've selected you for a special mission, if you're agreeable. Thurman glanced at his fellow generals. And we think you will be agreeable. Judd felt beads of sweat break out on his forehead. Something in the way they looked at him and the confidence in Thurman's voice implied that Judd would be agreeable whether he wanted to be or not. The general continued, ignoring the strained look on Judd's face. It's a top-secret mission. Only a handful of people even know this program exists. It must remain so. Judd nodded. General Stanton seconded the explanation.
We need someone with your level of integrity to carry out this mission. But I must warn you that it will be dangerous and potentially unsuccessful.
Thurman held a file folder in his hands. You would be doing an important service for our country. The look of guaranteed compliance in the hardened steel gray of Thurman's eyes reminded Judd of a mob boss looking that same way when he doled out commands to underlings.
I'm in the soup now, so I may as well sound willing.
With as much enthusiasm as he could muster, Judd responded.
Sir, I went into this field knowing there are risks. I've dedicated my life to being an astronaut and serving our country. I accept whatever assignment you choose to give me.
Leaning towards Judd with his forearms on the table, General Helms smiled.
Given your outstanding background, that's what we hoped you'd say. Welcome to our project.
Thurman opened the file folder and spread documents onto the table for review. These are some standard forms we need you to sign. Cutting through the legalese, they are acknowledgments that you understand the dangerous nature of this mission and none of your heirs can sue the government should this mission go awry.
I will sign whatever you want me to. I am a little confused, however, if I may ask you something.
Judd looked nervously around the table at the generals.
Yes, what do you want to know? Well, I'm devoted to my country, but I'm not a military man. I would have thought you'd recruit a service member before a civilian like myself.
Helms straightened his back and looked at his companions. He then turned his attention back to Judd.
We have our reasons, and we'd prefer not to discuss them. This is a sensitive operation, and we need you to come with us today. We will head to the training facility at an undisclosed location. Do you have any personal matters to attend to before you leave?
General Thurman looked at his cohorts.
If you need a day to get things in order, we can make allowances. That won't be necessary, General Thurman. I have no family, and I don't even have any pets since my dog Rex died 2 months ago. I can pack a few personal items and leave today, no problem. Good, good. Your lack of entanglements made you a prime candidate. Meet us at the helipad here at 1600 hours.
Helms stood, and the others followed his lead.
Don't worry about your rent or car payments. Those will be handled for you. We want you to solely focus on your mission.
With no further discussion, the generals excused themselves and left Judd to gather what he needed for the trip. His head spun.
What have I agreed to? All I know is that my country has called on me, and I'm going to accept the challenge I'm given. I've waited my whole life for the chance to go into space, and this could be my best shot at doing something big.
Something big. Yes. This is what he had worked for his whole life. Now wasn't the time to ask too many questions. Judd raced off to his apartment to grab a few clothes. As he was about to exit his place, he stopped and stared at a photo of his mother that sat on the mantel in the living room. He paused, then let sentimentality get the best of him. He grabbed the photo and stuffed it into the small bag of clothes and toiletries he had packed. Checking his watch, he arrived back at the complex with a little time to spare. A military helicopter awaited him along with the 3 generals who stood on the helipad.
Mr. Simpson, we are glad to have you on this project. This is of the utmost importance to our country and to the world. Once we land at our destination, we will brief you and begin your training.
General Thurman motioned for Judd to board the helicopter. The wind from the chopper blades took his breath away, and Judd's heart raced as he took a seat inside the aircraft.
For security reasons, we won't discuss the mission until we are behind the fence of the training center,
General Stanton shouted above the noise of the rotors. His voice had an edge to it, and Judd decided against saying anything in reply. He gave the man a nod and turned his head to watch the land shrink, then pass by as they lifted off and banked to the left. Thank you for joining me for Into the Night, an anthology series written by Caroline Giammanco, narration and sound design by Nari Kwak, theme music by Nico Rodriguez. All original music and editing in part provided by Flyboy Entertainment. You can find our links in the show notes. Please remember to like and subscribe, and if you enjoy what you hear, please leave us a 5-star review to help other excursionists to join us. You can find us on your favorite podcast directory. See you next time. And remember, whether in the shadows or in the daylight, all twisted paths take you into the night. Into the Night is a Creative Typo Entertainment production.